Hi, everyone, and welcome to Strategic Wealth Strategies with our host, Alan Porter. Alan, what's going on, man? How are you?
Oh, it's great. We got a great interview set up with Bob Larson today. As I said before in many of my podcasts, I'm a registered investment advisor, and I have a team of people that I count on because not everybody can know everything. And Bob is one of those people that's on my team. He's a specialist in his field, and he's a specialist in many fields as far as that goes. But Bob is one of the leading life insurance experts in the United States. I can't go over all the accolades that he's accumulated during his time, but he is the head of the settlement masters. And this is a very, very important subject for people in their senior years, because I'm not sure, but there's billions of dollars that go unclaimed because the insurance companies are raising the premiums to where people cannot afford it. But Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Alan. It's great to see you.
Great seeing you. Let me ask you a question, Bob. Why sell my life insurance?
That's a good question. I've been in the business for over 40 years, and I've never seen the issues that occurred today in the life insurance industry. There's been an incredible upsurge in stock companies raising the cost of the insurance policy they bought 20 years ago, where the premium was level all that period of time. And in 2019, the stock companies were making very little money in the process of their investments, and made the decision to raise the cost of insurance on the senior community. And it's been a disaster. I mean, absolute disaster as what has happened. Premiums have skyrocketed 5 times from what they were. People aren't even aware that the policy is going to lapse within a few years. So they need to get with it and find out what they can do about it.
Yeah, Bob, let me ask you this question. Now, that's stock companies. That's no mutual companies are doing this, correct?
No, none. And not all the stock companies, but 13 of them have done it.
Okay. But see, people need to understand a mutual company owns its allegiance to the policyholders. And that's not so with stock companies. They owe their allegiance to the stockholders.
That makes sense.
That's what's happened.
All right. What is the policy rescue analysis, Bob?
That's a great question. We developed a compliance system to protect the client and the advisor. And we did that about 5.5 years ago when I saw the problem that was existing in this particular sector of the market. About 70% of the policies that were sold back in the 80s and 90s were in this category. And so these policies, as they've matured, have now got themselves into a problem. So we developed a compliance process that goes through showing the value of keeping the policy versus the value of selling the contract. So clients and the families could know exactly what's the better thing for them to do. So we coined it the policy rescue system. It's unique. Lloyd's of London insures us. They say we're the only company in the industry that they will insure because of the care we give to the client in this senior category. We're very passionate about this, and it's imperative that you get the word out that people in this category absolutely need their contracts out analyzed.
Bob, let me ask you this question. First off, I want to know if I'm eligible for a life settlement, but the thing is, people don't understand. It's like Coventry Direct. We see that advertisement on TV. How are you different with Settlement Masters than Coventry Direct?
Well, it's like night and day. I don't want to talk poorly about any company, but I will tell you that what we do is represent the policy owner. We don't represent the fund. All that company and other companies that are in the practice of selling contracts represent the fund. And all they're trying to do is to buy a policy at the lowest price. And they do no comparison of what people can do to keep their contract. Now, the reason that that's important, Alan, is that if somebody has a policy and the paid up value of that contract is better than what they can get in the market, they should keep that contract. And we want them to know that. And if a company gets somebody to sell their contract before they let them know what those numbers are, the children can get in a lawsuit after the parents die. They can sue the parties involved. And so we eliminate all that by making sure everybody is informed and everything is transparent, including fees and costs and what they can do to keep it versus the value of putting it into capital markets.
Wow. How does the master's process work?
Well, Alan's a master, so your host is one of the master grads. The master's program works by collecting data in the very beginning. We collect all the medical data and we do a preliminary review with the client's family prior to anything starting. We want them to see what the expenses are. We want them to see what the values might be. We have an algorithm in our system that'll show them approximate values of what they might get in the market. And then we want to show them the cost that they have to pay to keep that policy in force so that they can make a comparison between what it costs to keep it versus the economics of marketing and the capital markets. Now, let me say this about that. When we go into the capital markets, we represent the client, the policy owner. And when it's the right thing to do, and they believe it's the right thing to do, to sell their contract, we pick the top 4 funds in the market and get them to compete against each other so that it's like an auction. And so that drives the price to the highest level, where if you're just a fund buying contracts like the one that was mentioned just a minute ago, you're not in a competitive situation. It's like selling your home to one buyer. You have no leverage. But if you have 5 buyers, there's a little bit of action that occurs if 5 people want your home. So that's what we do when we work toward getting the market value of the policy itself.
Well, I got a question. If I got somebody is watching this podcast, what do they need to be eligible for this?
Say that again, Alan, please.
What would someone need to be eligible for this type of program?
Oh, good question. We have settled contracts as low as age 62, but in reality, the 70s and 80s and 90s, even though that might sound a little ridiculous, 90-year-old, we have 2 90-year-olds right now that are in process that they can't afford the policy and they need to care at home. And the only way they're going to get it is the biggest asset they own is their life insurance contract. The sweet spot is over 80. When funds buy the contract, they buy it in a pool of, say, 1,000 policies. And they want what's called a life expectancy to be less than 10 years. Now, clients don't have to worry about that because life expectancy is not a prediction. I mean, they're not predicting when they're going to die. It's just that science of buying these is buying them in a pool where they have a period of time that they know that they're going to be able to handle or pay for the contracts they're buying. So I would say 70s, 80s, and 90s are the best. If somebody has impaired medical condition and they're in their 60s, in fact, we just settled a 52-year-old that had Huntington's disease and he was in stage 4. He wasn't viatical. In other words, he was going to live 4 or 5 years. That contract was saleable, but it's highly rare unless they're in their 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Why complete the analysis?
Well, if you don't, first of all, you're not going to ever know what the value of that contract really is. The carrier will tell you, we're going to pay you a number, and that number is a pittance to what that value of the contract is really worth. The contract is really worth what the market says it's worth. It's like any other asset. In 1911, life insurance was deemed to be an asset. And so that's been carried over since that period of time. If they don't have it evaluated, they won't know what the value is. And if they have it evaluated, they must have a company that evaluates the keeping versus selling values for them so that they can decide what's better for their family. We report transparently everything that's in the data package for the client and the family so they can decide what works for them the best.
Mhm.
Bob, can you tell me some of the benefits that you'll receive?
Well, I can tell you that tears came to my eyes about 2.5 years ago when we had a client that had been told by a CPA that he needed to drop the life insurance policy because he was in financial trouble. And so he was about to do that. And his lawyer called me and said, would you give it a second set of eyes? Well, the benefit to this guy is he had a policy that had a cash value of $29,000. And he was going to cash it in and use the money for overhead or whatever he was going to use it for. I said, just hold, let us do an analysis. The benefit was, we, believe this or not, we were able to get $950,000 to him. It was enough money for him to cover the overhead in his company and invest in a catalog that is today the #1 profit center in the company. That's just one example of a business owner that didn't know the value. And believe me, in this economy with recession and all the things that are going on, there are companies going out of business. There are companies cutting back their costs. And sometimes they cut back, unfortunately, the investment of life insurance without asking a professional like you, Alan. They just do it. Their CPA says do it, and they do it. And they drop those contracts that are worth 10, 15, 100 times more than the carrier will give them back. So I highly encourage to tell your client base, do not drop a contract if you're in that age group without having a full policy rescue analysis. And Alan Porter can make sure that that happens for you.
Excellent.
Yeah, Bob, I remember that story, that when I first got with you and went through the master's class, I remember that story distinctly. And one of the things I tell affluent clients is, they say, well, I have my financial advisor, CPA, attorney, give me all my financial and tax advice. I said, well, I'm not here to replace your advisor, but I want to work with them to give you the best client, give the client the best scenario. And I said, but you may have the greatest advisor in the world, but it's what they don't know that will end up costing you hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and undue taxes, fees, and lost opportunity.
Alan, why does this happen that these carriers charge this and it's really not what the value of that policy should be?
Well, the stock companies are losing money, as Bob said earlier.
The stock companies have lost money for the last decade, and their stockholders are begging them to start paying dividends. The only way they can pay dividends is to increase the profit or reduce the expenses. And so what they've done is they picked a category. And I'm going to tell you a secret that I normally wouldn't do on a podcast, but I'll tell you this. They picked a category of people that if they get them off the books, the insurance company is going to retrieve all the money they have at a reinsurance level, which are tens of millions of dollars. So when they have a policy, somebody that's 80 years old, and let's say it's $1 million policy, and they're going to get that policy price so high that the policy owner is going to drop it or cash it in. What they're going to get back is about $300,000 of posted credits at the reinsurance level. They're going to retrieve that. They've made all their money. All they have is the liability of $1 million. They have no economic reason to keep it. Let me just say, this is the stock companies. I can mention the 13, but I won't. But there are 13 of them. They need to know, the seniors need to know if their contract is in peril. So I'd highly recommend you to contact Alan Porter, and he will be able to help you get this evaluation done in a way where you'll be fully informed.
Well, Bob, I love that. So that's the segue. Alan, where can we find information? Where's the best place?
Well, you can contact me at 910-551-1046, or my email address is strategicwealth0@gmail.com. And not only that, Bob has many other tax saving strategies that I've relied on, and other advisors have relied on, because they're proven tax saving strategies that people don't know about.
Alan, thank you for saying that. One of the biggest things in the world right now are taxes. People are getting taxed to death, and we have a blueprint, a way of being able to help them look at all the things that are available, that are IRS approved, things that are not outside the box, and they'll be safe in, and it'll reduce their taxes.
That's absolutely correct, Bob.
Alan, pleasure again. And Bob, wow, information I never knew until I co-hosted the Strategic Wealth Strategies podcast, because this is information that, Bob, can't be put out in the radio all the time or any place, because you have to have a specific certification to be able to speak out this information. That's the nice thing, Bob, about creating a podcast like this. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate, for the people listening, this information that's coming from you. Good job, Neil.
All right. Thanks. All right. That was the Strategic Wealth Strategies podcast, guys. Take care.